Hello and welcome back to the New York Film Academy Hour. We're excited because we have a special guest coming back into the studio today. Caton is here with us. He is the chair of 3D animation and visual effects, and he has brought one of his most famous puppets with him today to talk to us about the future of digital puppeting. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
Hey guys, I'm Joelle.
And I'm Pega.
And we're super excited because Craig is joining us in the studio again. Hi, Craig.
Hi.
How are you?
Thanks for inviting me again. It's great to be here.
Dude, absolutely. After we got your stories from Batman last time, I knew we had to have you back. If you guys haven't checked out Craig's last episode, definitely go and do that. I'm going to give you a little rundown of his career. He has worked in visual effects, special effects, makeup, and animation, but he might be best known for his puppets. He's worked on films like Steven Spielberg's Jurassic Park. He's worked on Terminator 2, Ghostbusters, Batman Returns, Tremors, Predator, Disney's Tangled, Disney's Meet the Robinsons, Apollo 13, Edward Scissorhands, so many more films. Things that he was like, I didn't really do anything on that, so we don't have to mention it. Like, it would be. He's like, no, that's just a little. His career is that big. It's huge. He's worked on everything. And today he's going to talk to us about digital puppeteering, the future of puppets, and some of his old school puppets. So thanks for being here.
Some of the old stuff. So what are we going to start with? The new stuff?
I want to know what puppeteering is.
Specifically? Okay, yeah.
What does that mean?
Oh,
like, is that like Sesame Street puppets?
Oh,
or?
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there's like lots of different types of puppets. Like, for instance, like Kermit is a combination of hand puppet and rod puppet because his you put your hand up there and that's controlling his head and his mouth, but then his arms and his hands are being controlled by little rods you control. So you're just like, hey everybody, it's Kermit the Frog here, and that sort of thing.
Craig also does voices for fun.
And then there are some other puppets that are nothing but they're controlled by cables, very similar to like the cables that you use in your bicycles to shift gears and stuff like that,
cool.
The derailleur cable as it's called. So there are cable activated puppets that are run that way, and also a lot of puppets that are just that are activated using servos, like the exact same type of servos that you would use in remote control helicopters and cars and airplanes and stuff like that. Lots of that.
Nice.
That's amazing. So you get into puppets. We talked a little bit about it last time. After doing special effects makeup and things, you're creating monsters in your room, and then you move slowly outward as you reach out to your mentor, who crazily responds back and is like, yes, here are the tools you need to get started.
Yeah.
You follow those tools, you do get started, and then you work on these major films. I don't want to bury the lead. Let's just show what you've brought today and talk about Jurassic Park, because
we'll talk about that.
I think for a lot of people, especially from my generation, Jurassic Park was their first really huge blockbuster movie. I was 5 when Jurassic Park came out, and I remember going to the theaters to see it, and the kids in the car.
You guys were the right age, yeah.
It was so good.
You were the people that I'm so thankful to, because you guys like saw the movie and loved it, and then we were all like, yay, and it became really popular.
So tell us,
go for it. Just here it is.
Yeah. Ow! Explain to everybody what it is.
All right, so this is the T-Rex's little toenail from Jurassic Park.
Oh, wow.
So,
can I touch it?
You may,
Rah!
And if you look here, we still have actual dirt from the set. It's still on the bottom of the claw. But this was her left little toenail. The only reason I know that is because on the back it has L1 on it.
Oh,
wow.
So that way. Yeah, and this is actually property of Steven Spielberg. But I take one of the other things that I do with Steven Spielberg is I take care of E.T. the extraterrestrial puppet for Steven Spielberg as well.
What do you mean take care of him?
Well, I should say used to take care of from like 1993 or so, or 91 to about 2010. I would take care of E.T. and I would take him all over the world, and mostly do commercials. Like we would go to England and we would shoot a commercial, and then we would go to New York City and we'd shoot a commercial for Wendy's there, and then we would shoot countless commercials here over the years. And then they finally retired him in I think around 2010, where if they decided they were going to use him again, he would be all digital after that. But but for years and years, there were 2 puppets, an insert arm, and two little suits that a little person would wear. This wonderful woman, little person, her name was Margarita, would wear the suit, and we just had a really great time going all over the world doing ET for commercials and stuff like that.
What does taking care of a puppet entail as far as like upkeep and making sure it lasts?
Well, eventually the servos will burn out, so you need to replace the servos, and the skin every once in a while needs to be repaired and also be repainted. But one of the things that ET needed the most was he had an insert hand that had a finger light that would light up, right? He used finger light. Well, that would burn out all the time. And that was actually my first entrance into ET. Someone came over from Amblin and said, "Hey, ET's finger light is burned out. Can you take a look at it?" And I went, "Okay." So I went over there and I looked at it and I took out the light bulb. I found out that the light bulb was a brake light from like a 1977 like Chevy Nova type car. So
Wow.
I went to Pep Boys and I got 2 of them for like $4, and I replaced the brake light and put the skin back on his finger and gave it to him, and they asked me, "So how much do you want?" And I went, "I don't know. I mean, I just changed a light bulb." So we were making the light bulb jokes, but so I said, okay, $40, right? And they almost fell over. Like, what do you want, stock in the company? Because the person who'd fixed the puppet the time before we changed the light bulb, charged them $15,000 to change a light bulb.
Wow.
So they're like, "Wow, we like you, Craig."
I'm sure they do.
And that was the start. The changing of that light bulb was the start of my multiple years of taking care of ET, is because I was honest and forthright, and also, who's not a fan of ET?
Yes.
And so there was the respect there, and we had a great time. ET and I saw the world together, and it was so much fun. So
That's so cool.
I'm still kind of geeking out at the fact that this toenail is here, which is a sentence
yeah,
I
so
certainly
here's the
never
toenail,
thought
yeah.
I would say. But it's like film history.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
right here.
Yeah.
And I think, like, in getting to talk to you and having these conversations with you, I'm starting to see the large, like, giant role puppets have played in movies, which is a thing I never really thought about before. And so now I'm curious, when you're constructing these creatures, you really only have words on a page usually, right?
That's right.
Do you so you're not getting like templates or inspiration board kind of things. What goes into creating these characters?
Yeah, and you're right. It all starts with the script, and typically what I would do is I would read through the script and I would highlight all the parts that has anything to do with the creature or the character at all, and then I would take those and I would try to find out. The most important thing is to fulfill the function of that character or the creature. The character and the creature needs to believably fulfill its function inside a movie so that the audience believes it, and if it can't do that function believably, then you're lost. And there are a lot of things that go into that in terms of like. The first thing is, so like what I mentioned first, it's I go like with this 3-tiered system. I use functionality over form over content. So the first thing I do is I make sure the creature can actually fulfill all the functions in that movie. And then the second thing is I go to his form, which is the shape and the look, because the first thing people always notice about something is the overall shape and the silhouette. So then I go from the function to coming up with a really great silhouette, but always going back to make sure that silhouette is functional as well. And then after I got a nice cool silhouette and form looking, then I start going into the content in terms like the eyes and the nose and the skin detail and the texture and stuff like that, because that's the last thing you'll see. So you work kind of like from the outside inward, and so that's kind of the philosophy I use for creating characters.
What medium do you start with? Are you sketching it out? Are you working with clay or?
Oh, it's everything. I've sketched monsters on napkins.
Wow.
One time I was at the Macaroni Grill in Northridge, and they have butcher paper on their tables, and I sketched this dragon character, and before I left I had to tear off the table thing so I could carry it with me. So yeah, napkins. But my favorite medium is actually sculpting. I like to sculpt small little characters out of Roma clay, which is an oil-based clay. It never gets hard. It's always soft. And so, yeah, because I like to be able to like sit there and look at it and look at all the different angles and see, okay, what does it look like from the side and what does it look like from the back?
Have you ever had to like go into a meeting and show your work and, you know, maybe you knew that they weren't going to be too. I was reading Steve Jobs' biography, and they were talking about the Apple iPod original commercials, and he just wanted the clean ones where it just shows the product, and they wanted the white silhouettes. They're like, look, it sells the feeling of it, and he was eventually persuaded. And I'm wondering if you've ever had to go into a meeting with the same thing, where you know what you want, but you're kind of also aware of what they want. You kind of have to bring them to your side.
Oh yeah, that happens all the time. A lot of the times you'll go in, like if it's the initial meeting, you will already have read the script and you'll already have come up with a couple of designs, and then you'll go to the meeting with the designs and you'll show the designs to them and kind of get a feeling for what they like and what they're going for, and then you take what they like and you go back to your studio, and then you develop that more, and you just kind of becomes like an iterative process. But what I like to do is I like to if I'm designing a creature and if I have the time, what I do is I'll design between 3 and 5 drawings or little sculptures or whatever that are fairly, you know, standard for whatever that genre is, and then the next one I'll do the another set of 3 or 4 sculpture or 5 sculptures that are like kind of like on the edge, you know, kind of like, okay, so sure they want a dragon, but here's a dragon with feathers.
Yeah.
Or here's a dragon with something else, right? So you're kind of like you're kind of moving out of the envelope. And then I do a third set, which is completely off the cliff with designs. Just like I'll design a dragon that looks like it was designed by H.R. Giger, the guy who designed the Aliens, and so it's all ribs and mechanical stuff. So I'll have 3 sets of choices, and they can go like, oh, we like that, or we've seen this in movies too many times. But maybe they'll go to the second set and go, oh, you know, this one's kind of pushing the envelope with the feathers. And then sometimes, every once in a while, the radical ones will go over and oh, you know, there's the Giger dragon, we're going to go with that one. Not very often, but if you give them that variety, then they go, a lot of times they go, oh, I like the nose of this and the cheeks of that and this part of that. And then you'll go back and you'll take all those parts and make one creature from those parts and start designing them from that. The one thing is that when you're working for directors like Spielberg and James Cameron and Ron Howard, these directors, they know exactly what they want. So you can say, this is what I want, right? There are lesser directors where you can show them something and they go, I'm not sure. Maybe you could do some, and it becomes really nebulous, and you just kind of wander off and make some changes and hope that you can dial it in. And those are the ones that become the nightmare after a while, because those people just they really don't know what they want, and so you have to build it hundreds of times in order to get where they want it. And so yeah, that's.
How many people does it take to actually, I don't know, puppeteer a puppet on set?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really depends on the puppet. But like for instance, the full-size Raptor puppets on Jurassic Park, that was so head, neck, tail, and body and feet and the whole bit, required 14 puppeteers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So is there like a main person and everyone
Yes.
else is kind of, okay, cool.
Yeah, there's basically the way we ran it a slightly bit differently on the Raptors in Jurassic Park. There's always what they call the key puppeteer, and usually that's the person who's operating the head, because most of the body follows what the head's doing, right? So if I'm the head and the eyes, if I'm looking something, and the body kind of follows with it. So that's usually the key puppeteer. And usually the key puppeteer, it's like an orchestra. When you have 14 people, you actually start doing what they call puppeteering by the numbers. So you actually start calling out beats, and each puppeteer knows like on 4 and 6, they're going to pull their puppeteer level to do their thing. So you have one puppeteer out there going, and in this case we had Crash McCreary, who was also in a band himself, and so he would call out like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you would puppeteer by the numbers. But you would get to the point where you could be like a band, and he could go like 1, 2, and 3, and 4. And we go 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you know, for the
Nice.
controls. And so you would start to get a rhythm and stuff. And so everybody kind of needs to pay attention to what the key puppeteer is doing and feed off that. But also, you need to hear the numbers and puppeteer like that. So it's like being in an orchestra or a band, and you definitely need to rehearse to do it.
Right. That's so cool.
That's super incredible.
Yeah.
I know you worked on one of Pega's favorite movies, Terminator 2.
Terminator 2. Yeah.
What was your role in that movie?
I was one of the senior mechanical people building a lot of the puppets and then also puppeteering them. So there were several like all of the endoskeleton heads, just the robot heads themselves I assembled. And this is actually kind of funny because all of the T-800s is what they were called. They all had articulated eyes that moved, and they all had articulated jaws, so they could open and close their jaws. And I got to set, and I think I made 6 of these heads, all with the moving jaws. And I get to set, and I start puppeteering the jaw, and the first thing Jim Cameron says, they're endoskeletons. They never open their mouths. You can just wire them shut and keep them closed. And I'm like, cool. So
Wow.
so that happened. And but my favorite story on Terminator 2 has to do with a puppet I built called the Donut Head puppet. Now, Donut Head was the Robert Patrick T-1000 puppet that Linda Hamilton shoots him with a shotgun in this big hole shoved up his eyes. And you can see like the rotating collision beacon behind it. And okay, so we shot that. I made that puppet. Okay.
Oh my
and
God.
puppeteered him.
I'm going to freak out.
And we actually shot it in an actual steel mill that had been closed down, and they were actually dismantling the steel mill. It's like my headphones, I can't pronounce it right. And they were dismantling it and taking it to China, and they were going to rebuild it there. Anyway, so we shot the end sequence of Terminator 2 there. It was out in Fontana. And so I'm there with this puppet, and so it's a big hand puppet, and it has to be this reveal. And Robert Patrick is actually playing the arm of the puppet, so he's got his arm in the sleeve of the puppet, and so I got the puppet, he's got the arm, so he can reveal the face. And then there's another really great puppeteer. His name is Chris Swift, and Chris is actually, there's 2 little rods on the shoulders of the puppet, so we can make the shoulders move up and down. So there's me with the hand doing the head. There's Chris on the shoulders, and then there's Robert Patrick with that, and then there's another puppeteer with some remote controls to operate the eye blinks. And so the 3 of us all close together, like really close together, and we all showered that day, which was good. And you know, we're trying to do this reveal where the head reveals itself, and they want James Cameron wants the collision beacon to show up on the hole through his eye. And also he's got these Venetian eye lights. He's got these 3 rays of light coming down on his eyes, and he wants one particular ray of light to hit his left eye to bring it to life and light it up. Otherwise it looks a little dead. And so you're rotating your puppet into that position. You're trying to get those exact spots. So it was really, really difficult. And we did it perfect on take number 4.
Wow.
Nice.
And true to James Cameron fashion, whenever you did a really great take, this first thing James would say, "That's perfect. Let's do it again." And so we couldn't repeat it.
Yeah.
We couldn't get it done. It just, everything was going wrong after that. It got to the point where Jim thought I didn't know what I was doing.
Aww.
So he gets up and he gets literally this far from my face, and he says, "Do you know what you did wrong? Do you know what you did wrong?" And I went, "Yeah, I didn't get the eye in the light, and I didn't get the rotating the beacon." And all of a sudden he went from being like really like to like, "Oh, okay. All right, well, don't do it again or I'll kill you."
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, and well, anyway, we weren't able to get the shot. before breaking for lunch. And that's kind of like a crime on movie sets, because usually you want to finish what you're doing on a movie before lunch. That way, the grips and the gaffers and the people come back early from lunch and start setting up for the next shot, and not have to be rushed to doing it. So now all of those people hate me, because we're not going to come back to a new deal after lunch. We're going to come back to this stupid head. And so I'm kind of like, I'm walking to the tent where they're serving the food, and I'm just kind of like, oh, great. And next thing you know, there's Jim Cameron walking right next to me. I'm like, hey, I really gave it to you back there, didn't I? And like, nah, that's okay. It says, well, this is a really important shot, and this is one of the signature shots in the movies, and this shot is going to be on the cover of magazines, and this shot's going to be on the cover of Cinefex, and so we really want to get it right. And I go, yeah, that's great. And sure enough, it was on the cover of Cinefex.
Wow.
That shot. So I'm like, thanks, Jim. That was really cool. So
I really appreciate the amount of like, we need to get it right, and I'm in the war zone kind of mindset to, as soon as everything's done, being like, okay, so maybe overheated. Let me come back down and talk about like why it's important. I think that's a really good lesson for especially young directors, because it's easy to get heated on set. But at the end of the day, like, as you say, like, it's a team. There are like 5 of you trying to pull off this one puppet. That's really incredible. The other thing I think is incredible, especially as we're talking about Terminator, which had visual effects that were groundbreaking at that time. And looking at the kind of CGI filled world we live in today, I was kind of shocked to see how prevalent puppets still are on sets, having practicals there when I know a ton of people, including James Cameron, are like, computers only. And you're creating software to kind of help keep them around, but also bring them into the digital era.
I've actually created software to everybody's busy trying to get everything into the computer, and now I'm busy trying to get everything back out of the computer. I created some software that allows you, the industry standard software for animating characters is something called Autodesk Maya, and everybody uses it. And so what I've done is I've created some software that you can animate and do a performance inside Maya, but then you can record that performance inside Maya and then send it to a puppet and use that same performance that you use for the CG character. You can use it to run the puppet. So it's like a basically like a recorder for Maya that you can put on puppets. So
that's incredible. You were telling me that using a GoPro and facial recognition software that doesn't use the dots, it just uses the GoPro to capture the person's performance. You can then upload that facial, like the reactions of it, into the puppet, so they're having like very real muscle reaction. That is incredibly game changing.
Yeah, it's a company, and they've actually been around for a really long time doing it for doing this software for or just not what I'm doing, but doing what they call markerless facial capture or motion capture for the face. It's called Faceware. They're right here in the Valley, which is great, and their main office is in Texas, but they have been doing it for the video game industry for about 20 years, and they're kind of like the who's who in the video game industry for this stuff. And so I teamed up with them a year ago to work on this, and everybody's pretty excited about it. And it's exactly what you said. You aim a GoPro at a person's face, no markers, and then they talk, and then you take it into a piece of software called the analyzer, and it analyzes the face, even the eye moves and the eye blinks as well.
Wow.
Even records those. So you analyze it and you set that up, and then you send that to Maya, and then they have another set of software called the retargeter, which allows you to take it from that person's face and map it onto any character's face, whether it's a character of a human or non-human, an alien, an animal, doesn't matter. You can make the connection, and then from there, my software grabs those connections and sends it out to the puppet. So
I don't know why I think of like the Snapchat filters.
Yeah.
No, I know. It's sorry, but
No, I
that's
love
kind of
that.
the same thing. It's like it scans your face and you become,
Absolutely.
without the dots.
Yeah,
Definitely. No, you're here. You're thinking. I like it.
puts the little bunny ears on.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess what was really impressive to me was the fact that this software kind of allows you to, first of all, perfect a performance for the puppet before you get it there. The director can see it, everyone can approve it, and then it's ready to go. But also make quick changes on set too. You take a couple of minutes just to reprogram. And maybe avoid the Terminator issue of finding that exact mark.
Yeah, I mean, actually, if we'd done that with a programmed character, he would have hit the mark every single time.
Right.
And we could have set it up so, back in the day, if you were trying to do something mechanical like that, it kind of looked mechanical. That's why we were doing a lot of hand puppeteering. But today with this system, it's recording all those nuances, and you're getting that played back, and so it looks very natural when it plays back.
I know naturalness is kind of the pinnacle for puppeteering. It shouldn't feel like a puppet most of the time.
Yeah, you don't want people to know that. You want them to not think it's a puppet. And it's funny how actually easy that is, because you can pull out a Kermit puppet. I should have brought Kermit with me.
Yeah.
And you can sit there and you can Kermit, and people will actually start talking to Kermit, and they'll completely put you out of the loop.
Yeah.
And
so cool.
I think it's really neat. I think it's still very magical how people can still see the puppet, and they want to talk to it and interact with it.
I think it's kind of interesting. You were talking to me a little bit earlier before we started the show about finding that movement for the T-Rex, finding that kind of natural.
Oh my goodness! Yeah.
Feeling. Can you tell us that story?
How
That's
did we
fascinating.
come up with the T-Rex idea? Yeah. We were trying to figure out how to make the big giant T-Rex move, and we were one of the things we were looking at initially was based off of the King Kong attraction at Universal Studios, which burned down. And what that was is you would be in a tram and you would enter this big building, and there was King Kong there doing his things. But what people didn't know was that King Kong was actually a giant inflatable, like Macy's parade float. So on the bottom of that King Kong with these giant fans that were putting air through him to keep him full and inflated, and then he'd have mechanics in there to move him around and stuff, and they would squirt banana scent in there so everybody would smell bananas from the fans. So we looked at that kind of like the Macy's parade float, and I really didn't want to do that. I was kind of like, it's going to be a problem, because you could hit the hand and it jiggle and stuff. We looked at putting it on a seesaw. And I don't want to put it on a seesaw. I mean, it's actually there was a show up at Universal Studio called Five Will Goes West, and there's this giant cat puppet that was on a seesaw that would come up, and it worked pretty well. But still, I didn't want to do that. Then we were looking at construction equipment like the backhoe, the ditch diggers, and I looked at that, and they were certainly strong enough to do everything. But the problem was that when those backhoes move, they have what we call wagga wagga. When something moves and it shakes like this, so a backhoe goes like that little stuff is what we call wagga wagga. Highly technical term in the industry.
I love it.
And I was just looking at ways to overcome that, and I was going, oh, no, this is going to be so much work. I'm also on the sideline. I'm a helicopter pilot. I like to fly helicopters.
Oh, cool.
Just in his passing time,
Right? And just by coincidence, they were having the International Helicopter Convention in Anaheim that summer, and I thought, I got to get away from everything. I'm just going to go down to the convention. I'm going to go look at helicopters, because that's how I relax. But while I was down there, I saw this helicopter flight simulator that had like a 9,000-pound cockpit on it, on this multi-axis simulator, and it was moving it around just so gracefully and organically, and I knew right away, that's it. That's what we'll use we'll use flight simulator technology to power up the T-Rex. I came back and I told Stan and told Steven Spielberg, and everybody, it just clicked. Everybody goes, yeah, that's it. It's so obvious. That's the way we're going to do it. And the funny part was that the flight simulator company was based out of Santa Fe Springs here, a company called McFadden, and they had been approached by movie companies to do some similar stuff before, but it never happened. So they were pretty cynical. But when Steven stepped in, they're like, oh, this is real. But the cool thing was that they had been doing this flight simulator stuff for so many years that they'd already solved these problems that we had never even thought of. One of the biggest ones was that when the hydraulic fluid is moving through these hoses and stuff, it gets really hot, and then the fluid expands, and that causes the hydraulics to get spongy, and so they had to come up with like giant freezer units to keep the oil cool as it goes through, and all these other things that we never even thought about, but they were already on top of it. But yeah, so everybody said, yeah, this is the way to do it. McFadden came on board, and that's how we built the T-Rex. We put him on a motion simulator base, and then all of the mechanics in him were also based on flight simulator stuff. How's that for a long answer?
That is incredible. That is the full answer that we needed. And what strikes me about this story is that inspiration can come from anywhere. I know the original Kermit was constructed out of Jim Henson's mother's coat.
That's right. Her green overcoat.
So I'm curious, what tools should budding puppeteers have in their kit? What should people have on, and what should they be looking for if they want to get started in creating and fabricating their own puppets?
Oh wow. Well, I would certainly go out and try to find an old copy of something called the Dick Smith Monster Makeup Handbook, because in that little magazine, you can basically, the nice thing about it is, like any kid in America, the ingredients you can get from your drugstore and your grocery store to do the makeups in this magazine. So everything, you can do from Frankenstein makeups to mummy makeups and everything in between, and all it requires is a quick trip to your pharmacy or to your grocery store, your department store, and just uses household objects. And I thought that was for me, that was how I started out, and you're able to hit the ground running right away, because you don't have to now I have to go on Amazon and order some latex and wait for it to ship here. No, you can go straight to the store and buy some stuff and start right away. So,
I love it.
So yeah, that and stay in school. No.
Yes.
I wanted to make monsters from the time I was in the 6th grade. So my whole approach to getting through grade school and high school was every class that I took, I looked at that class in terms of what can I get out of this class that will help me create monsters? And that was a really great attitude for me to have to go in there, because I go into math class and I go, I'm probably going to have to figure out how to use a triple beam or something like that and weigh stuff. So maybe these math functions will be good. But when I went in, I would go into biology class, and I knew right away that if I wanted to make monsters and puppets, that having a really good knowledge of bone structure and muscle structure would also pay off as well. So that was my approach. Is whatever you do, and especially for you guys that are out there in school, especially high school. I know it can be really super boring. Believe me, we've all been there. But if you can look at it, and if you know what you want to do when you get out of school, and you can say, what can I use from this that like I said before, that you can take with you and use for your. Then that will help you get through that, and you'll walk away with something else as well. So, is that a good answer?
That's a wonderful answer. Pick up the book, read, go to your local grocery store, get the right ingredients, start creating.
Yeah.
Look for inspiration everywhere. That's beautiful. I love it.
Well, thank you.
Are there any other fun story anecdotes you want to share with us today? I know you have a whole bunch.
Well, we could talk about there are a couple more Jurassic Park things, since we're on the subject of Jurassic Park, about where we got inspiration from other places.
Yes.
For instance, the Raptor, the main Raptor insert puppet that I used, it was just a big hand puppet, right? But the head was this big, and the head and the upper arm weighed about 35 pounds. So trying to hold up a puppet like that is almost impossible, right? So what I did was I reinvented the Steadicam. Remember the Steadicam little arms that go around on the cameras and stuff? So a regular Steadicam at that time was too big to fit into the neck of the Raptor. So I didn't redesign it, I just built a smaller version of a Steadicam, and I put it in there. So that way I was wearing a backpack, and it had the Steadicam arm came off my shoulder and into the puppet, and And I didn't even have to have my hand in the puppet. It would just stay right there, and I could just have it. And then all I had to do is put my hand in the puppet and start moving the head around. So there was the Steadicam. So based off of what I'd seen from that.
Wow.
But it gets better because, you know, if you're holding a handle and say that this is your head or you're moving your head, you can turn your hand pretty good this way, but moving this way, you can't move as far, right? So obviously if I wanted my Raptor head to look to the right, he's only going to be able to do limited. So I put power steering in his head turn. So I put this great big servo on my backpack that was like this big. It was made for jumbo jets, and ran cables up to his head left and right. And then I had a little potentiometer in there that would sense when I would turn the head, and then once I started turning it, the power steering would take over and help me wrench it over and carry it farther. So I would sit there and I would just go, and he'd go, wah, and I go this way, and he'd go, wee, and I, you know, so I was just like, and one other really small kind of cheap piece of technology is that his head was looking down, so I put a spring on the top of his head to pull his head up. So that way he was permanently looking up, and all I had to do is grab his head and pull a little bit to pull him and make him look down. But if I wanted him to make him look up, I could just relax and he would go up automatically. So those are the little technology things inside the Raptor head that nobody knows or sees or talks about. But it was so way over the top, and you know, power steering and Steadicams inside the Raptor head, and nobody knows
What
about it.
sells it too, because it's that snapback in the neck, and then like the deadly, like very focused look in the eye, where you're like, oh God, it's gonna get them, like run away.
Yep.
Dang it, that's cool. Verklempt with emotions about the cool things. Okay, so you've worked on iconic puppets from Slimer to the. Does the worm in Tremors have a name?
Grabozoids.
Grabozoids.
Or maybe they're graboids. I can't remember. We had a couple of names for the individual puppets. They were named after the ducks from Huey, Dewey, and Louie.
Yes!
So
from the DuckTales.
We had three main puppets that were named after Huey, Dewey, and Louie. And then we had one specialized puppet that was... that a lot of the credit goes to a good friend of mine, Jeff Edwards, who built this puppet bulletproof so that it could burst through walls and burst up through the ground. And his name was, I think his name was Rambo.
Nice.
Because we'd ram him through stuff.
Oh my God.
But you know, like when they come through the floorboards of the store and grabs the Chinese guy and pulls him down through the store floorboards and stuff. That was an actual Rambo head that burst through those boards and actually did that.
Wow.
And he was on like this big train track on this great big seesaw, and there were like 5 guys running him down the track.
So we've talked a little bit about like creating and fabricating classic puppets, but what do kids need to know about digital puppets in the future? What should they be learning now that's going to be the next big wave of the future?
Well, I certainly recommend for digital, if you're a student, it's great, because if you can use your student ID to create a free account at Autodesk, and then you can get a free copy of Autodesk Maya, which is the same animation software that all of the majors are using and have been for many years now. And so if you have a computer that you can run it on, and most computers are able to run it, install that, and then go straight to YouTube and start looking at tutorials. And then also in very short time, NYFA we're almost ready to release our new resource page.
Ooh.
And on that, we will also have additional Maya resources for students and for people who are interested.
Nice.
That our instructors and that we are developing. Some pretty cool stuff that's happening.
I'm really excited. I'm excited to see the Anim Servo up and running at NYFA, and I know you just were at SeaGraph doing demonstrations and showing that off. I know you got a class people can sign up for.
Yeah, I'm actually teaching it as a class. I'm teaching it through a school called the Stan Winston School of Character Arts, which was Stan Winston was one of the probably maybe the greatest creature character creator of all time, and he passed away a few years ago. But his son Matt Winston, who is actually was a very popular actor that nobody knows about, he started this school a couple years ago. It's been a while, and then he's been inviting all of the people from the makeup effects industry over the years, like myself, and we go in and we're creating stuff. So I have I've done one webinar series with him, and then this next one starts in 2 weeks, and it's called An Observo, and it will be on the you can find it on the Stan Winston School of Character Arts.
Nice.
And it'll be 3 sessions long. Yeah, so
Cool.
Definitely check that out. The Stan Winston School of Design. Name drop the book again. Monster Arts Effects book.
Oh, the original.
Yeah.
Yeah, the original one was called the Monster Makeup Handbook.
Monster Makeup
by
Handbook.
Dick Smith.
Is this the same book that was featured in Sense8?
I'm not sure.
I think it was.
Might be.
The kids in there were obsessed with monster makeup movies and perfecting all that stuff. Check out the book. Check out the class and design your own puppets and send us pictures because I'd love to see what you guys
That'd be cool.
are working on, right?
Yeah.
We want to thank Craig Caton for being here with us
Oh,
again. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for
That's
inviting
awesome.
me.
You have just incredible stories, and it's heartwarming to hear them. And
Are we out of
exciting.
time already?
We
Oh
are.
my gosh, guys.
I know.
It's like
Time
both
flies.
times I come on this show, it's just like, and
You just have to come back again.
that's right.
Please do. We
Oh,
want
I'd
to hear
love
more of
to.
these
Thank
great
you.
stories.
Yeah.
So thank you, Craig, for coming. Join us back here next week, Thursday at 4 p.m. for the next NYFA Hour, where we'll be talking to more students, alumni, and faculty about their next great projects. We'll see you soon.
Yay.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.